I posted that bikini pic on purpose after Marcus, and I fought about the dishwasher. Everyone thinks I'm just petty, but they don't understand the math I had to do. I needed him to see what he'd lose. Now he's ghosted me completely. My best friend Kat called me toxic, and I can't even look at my own reflection without seeing my mother's calculating eyes staring back. The real damage isn't the unfollow or the blocked calls, it's that I might actually be the villain I swore I'd never become. By the time you hear everything, the deleted texts, the staged argument, what I did with his brother's phone, you'll probably hate me too, but I need someone to know why I had to break us to save myself. The fight itself was so stupid I can barely stomach it. Marcus had promised he'd load the dishwasher before work, and there it sat, crusted with last night's pasta dishes. I stood in our kitchen at 7:47 a.m., running my finger through the sauce on a plate, feeling that familiar squeeze in my chest. He'd been forgetting things lately, anniversaries, grocery lists, my existence. When I called him, he sighed like I was the 10th robocall of the morning. Babe, I ran out of time, I'll do it tonight. That word, tonight, landed like a threat. I'd been waiting for tonight for weeks. Marcus used to notice when I wore his favorite green sweater, used to send me memes about otters holding hands because he knew I loved them. Lately, though, he'd been coming home late with his phone glued to his palm, smiling at texts I couldn't see. I'd stopped asking who he was talking to because his answers felt rehearsed, and I was tired of auditioning for reassurance. So there I was, holding that stupid saucy plate, when I noticed his phone charging on the counter. He'd left it home for the first time in months. The screen lit up with a message preview, "Can't wait to see you later, Jenna." My throat closed. Why was some Jenna waiting to see my boyfriend? Why was he seeing anyone later when he just promised me his entire evening? I should have waited. Should have breathed through it. Instead, I grabbed my own phone and opened my photo gallery, scrolling back to last summer's beach trip, me in that red bikini, the one Marcus used to untie with his teeth. My finger hovered over the post button while my heart hammered out a rhythm of pure panic. This would get his attention. This would remind him. The math was simple. If he scrolled past it, we were over. If he liked it, we had a chance. If he called me immediately, I'd know I still mattered. I posted it with a caption that just said "missing this energy" and a peace sign emoji. Then I texted Marcus, "Thanks for nothing on the dishes. Enjoy your day with Jenna." My hands shook so badly I almost dropped the phone. By noon, the photo had 47 likes. Marcus's wasn't one of them. Kat texted, "Girl, you okay?" which is friend code for "this is embarrassing." I told her I was fine, just feeling myself. She replied with a side-eye emoji that made my stomach drop. When Marcus still hadn't called by 3, I did something worse. I drove to his office building and circled the block 3 times before parking across the street. I told myself I was protecting my investment, that 3 years deserved surveillance. I saw him come out at 5:15, alone, which should have relieved me but didn't. He walked 2 blocks to the parking garage, and I followed on foot, hiding behind a newspaper stand like a character in a bad movie. He got into his car and drove north, toward our apartment. No Jenna in sight. I decided the lack of evidence meant I needed to try harder. If he wouldn't react to the photo, I'd give him something he couldn't ignore. I went home first and staged the evidence. I piled the dirty dishes in the sink, no, the counter. I wanted them visible. I left my laptop open to a recipe for chicken parmesan, the meal I'd made on our 2nd anniversary. I put on that green sweater he loved and nothing else, arranging myself on the couch like bait. When his key turned in the lock at 6:43, I felt a surge of power I hadn't experienced in months. He walked in, saw the dishes, saw me. His face did a complicated dance of exhaustion and confusion. "I thought we were fighting," he said, setting his bag down slowly. "We are. So why are you?" He gestured at my outfit, my pose, the entire performance. "I wanted you to have a visual aid for what you're about to lose." The words came out rehearsed because they were. I'd practiced them in the shower. Marcus rubbed his temples, a gesture I'd learned meant he was counting to 10. "Can we just talk about the dishwasher like adults?" That's when I mentioned Jenna. Watched his face go from tired to furious in the space of a breath. "You went through my phone. It was right there. That doesn't make it yours." He picked up his phone, scrolled frantically. "Jenna is my sister, you psycho. She's coming to town to help me pick out your..." He stopped abruptly, a door slamming shut in his eyes. "Never mind, you know what, never mind." He walked into our bedroom and started packing a bag. I followed, still in my sweater and underwear, dignity dissolving with each step. "Where are you going?" "To my brother's. I can't do this right now." "Do what? Care about me?" I grabbed his arm. He shook me off. That's when I really lost it. when I told him about the photo I'd posted, how everyone could see what he was throwing away. His jaw tightened so hard I heard his teeth grind. He pulled out his phone, opened Instagram, and unfollowed me right there. The finality of that gesture, one thumb tap, and I watched my follower count drop, felt more violent than a slap. Then he blocked my number. I know because I called him 3 minutes after he left, and it went straight to voicemail. Every time. The next morning, Kat came over with coffee, took one look at my face, and said, "Tell me you didn't." When I explained about Jenna, she shook her head. "You know his sister's name is Jenna, you've met her twice." The floor fell out from under me. She was right. Of course she was right. I'd been so primed for betrayal that I'd rewritten my own memory, turned his sister into a phantom mistress. Kat set the coffee down and pulled up my Instagram on her phone. The red bikini photo had 212 likes now, including 12 from men I didn't know. The comments section was a cesspool of fire emojis and damn girl sentiments. "You need to take this down," she said quietly. "This isn't you." But it was me. That's what nobody understood. The girl in that photo, smiling like she hadn't a care in the world, was the me I'd been performing for months while the real me crumpled inside. I told Kat I'd delete it, but when she left, I just made my account public instead. If Marcus was going to ignore me, I'd make sure he couldn't escape me. The photo hit 500 likes by dinner. Comments from coworkers I barely spoke to. A DM from my manager saying, "Maybe keep personal posts personal," with a winky face that made me want to vomit. I screenshot it all, sent it to Marcus via email since he'd blocked everything else. Subject line, "This is what you did." I spent the next 4 days in a fugue state of posting and deleting, each photo more desperate than the last. Me in his t-shirt, me crying in his t-shirt. A carousel post of our first year together captioned, "Some things aren't meant to last." My follower count ballooned while my life caved in. His brother Jake finally called me on day 5. "You're blowing up his phone at work, Allie. This has to stop." He blocked me. "Because you posted revenge porn of yourself and tagged his workplace in the comments." I had no memory of doing this, but when I checked, there it was. I'd mentioned his company on a photo of me holding a sign that said "Your loss" in Sharpie. My hands had been operating without my brain's permission. "I'll stop when he talks to me," I said, my voice small and foreign. Jake sighed. "He'll talk when you give him a reason to listen." I took that as permission. That night, I borrowed my coworker's car and drove to Marcus's brother's apartment, parked where I could see their living room window. At 11:30, Marcus came into view, laughing at something Jake said. He looked lighter without me. That's when I understood the true depth of my miscalculation. I hadn't been testing his love. I'd been weighing him down. Still, I didn't leave. I sat there until 2 a.m., watching the glow of their TV flicker, memorizing the shape of his head against the backlight. I told myself this was devotion. It was surveillance. It was the opposite of letting go. The next morning, I created a fake Instagram account using an old email address. I followed Marcus, his brother, his sister Jenna, whose profile I'd finally looked up and recognized with a fresh wave of shame. I spent hours piecing together their family brunch from Jenna's stories, Marcus smiling, genuinely, holding his niece. A caption that said, "So good to have my brother back." Become his absence. The thing he needed space from. The problem he'd solved by leaving. I went to work hollowed out, and that's when my manager called me into her office. The HR complaint had been filed, not by Marcus, but by my own coworker who'd seen the mention. "This is unprofessional," she said, sliding a printed copy of my tear-stained selfie across her desk. "We need you to take a step back from client-facing projects." My reputation, which I'd built over 4 years of early mornings and late nights, dissolved in the time it took to type a caption. I wanted to explain, but the words tangled. How do you tell your boss you're self-destructing because you forgot your boyfriend's sister's name? I went home and opened Marcus's laptop, which he'd left behind. The password was still our anniversary date. My stomach lurched as the desktop loaded, a photo of us from last summer, the same beach trip where I'd taken the bikini picture. He hadn't changed it yet. That small, stupid hope kept me going as I opened his Instagram messages, found Jenna's thread, and started reading. That's where I found it. Message after message about ring shopping, about proposal plans, about how he'd been ghosting me because he was terrified I'd find the receipt in his email. Jenna had sent him photos of vintage settings. "She'll love this one," she'd written. "Just don't let her neurotic ass find it before you propose." Neurotic ass. That was how his family saw me. That was the context I'd earned. I closed the laptop numb. The proposal I'd been trying to provoke, the attention I'd been desperate for, it had been there all along, buried under my own paranoia. I could have waited 3 more days. Instead, I'd created the exact chaos that proved Jenna right. My phone buzzed. A DM from the fake account I'd made. Marcus had posted a story of a sunset with the caption, "Finally seeing clearly." I responded from my real account, the only place he hadn't blocked me yet. "I know about the ring." 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. "Finally, you went through my computer. You left it." Even as I typed, I knew how pathetic it sounded. The response took 5 minutes that felt like 5 years. "I'm changing the flight. Jenna says I should get a restraining order. Please don't make me." A restraining order, like I was dangerous. Like my love was a weapon he'd need legal protection from. I read his message 47 times, searching for the subtext the way back. There was none. That night I went to the bar where Marcus and I had our first date. I ordered 2 drinks, his usual IPA and my wine, and photographed them side by side. Posted it with a caption about circles closing. The likes poured in, but the only person I wanted to reach had built a wall neither of us knew how to scale. I drank both beverages and Ubered to his brother's place at closing time. I didn't knock. I just sat on the curb, wrapped in his old hoodie I'd stolen from the laundry, and texted Jake, "Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him I'll delete everything, just please tell him something." Jake's reply came at dawn, "You've got to stop using me as a carrier pigeon. This is between you and him, but Allie. You're making it really hard for him to defend you." I hadn't realized he was defending me. I hadn't considered that behind closed doors, Marcus might be fighting for the narrative of who I was. A woman having a moment, not a monster having a meltdown. That gap between his loyalty and my behavior felt like a canyon I was actively widening with each post, each call, each desperate performance of a person I wasn't sure I'd ever been. For 3 weeks, I existed in this purgatory. I took down the bikini photo after it hit 1,000 likes, but the internet had already archived my breakdown. I created a document titled Evidence of My Sanity, where I screenshotted every nice thing Marcus had ever said to me, every photo where we looked happy. I sent it to his work email. It bounced back. I started therapy because Kat gave me an ultimatum: either you get help or I tell your mother why I won't be your emergency contact anymore. The therapist, a kind woman with silver hair, listened to my story and said, "It sounds like you were testing him to see if your worst fears were true." When I asked what that meant, she leaned forward. "What were you afraid would happen if you simply asked him about Jenna?" The truth spilled out in a mess of snot and tears. I was afraid he'd confirm I was unlovable. Afraid the distance I felt was real, not imagined. Afraid I was too broken from my mother's constant critiques to be anyone's wife. The photo, the posts, the stalking, they weren't about Marcus at all. They were about proving I was right to be scared. But here's the part that'll make you sick. Even while I was in therapy, I kept the fake Instagram account. I watched Marcus delete our photos, one by one, from his profile. I watched him follow a new girl, some blonde in his hiking group. I watched him rebuild his life in real time, and I took notes on every detail I could use to insert myself back into the narrative. I told my therapist I was processing my grief. What I was really doing was building a case. The blonde's name was Sarah. She posted about sustainable living. Marcus liked 3 of her posts in a row, something he'd never done for me, even when we were happy. I created a fake profile, followed Sarah, and commented on her photos with insider knowledge about Marcus's favorite coffee. She responded, grateful for the tip. We became friends. I was catfishing my ex's new interest to sabotage their connection before it could bloom. That's a level of calculation that doesn't get better with therapy. That's a choice you make fully conscious, eyes open, heart closed. One evening, Sarah posted about a hiking date she was planning. "Want to surprise him with his favorite snack?" she wrote. I knew exactly what to suggest, the same trail mix I'd made Marcus for our last anniversary. When she posted a photo of them together, him smiling that same smile from Jenna's stories, I felt the final trap snap shut. I'd orchestrated their first perfect memory. The worst decision wasn't the bikini photo. It was this: using my knowledge of Marcus to make his new relationship glow, because I knew it would hurt more when I finally revealed myself. I wanted him to taste happiness so that my truth would spoil it completely. I wanted to be the ex who didn't just burn the bridge but salted the earth on both sides. I kept up the Sarah persona for 2 months. I learned their inside jokes, their plans, the way he was taking it slow because he'd been burned before. She confided in my fake profile about his trust issues, his hesitation to commit. He says his ex made him doubt his own reality, she wrote, and I felt a sick pride. I'd accomplished that. I'd gaslit a good man into questioning his sanity, and now some innocent woman was paying the therapy bill. The day I decided to come clean wasn't born of conscience. It was exhaustion. I was maintaining three separate realities: my real life where I went to work and pretended to function, my fake Instagram where I stalked and sabotaged, and my therapy sessions where I performed remorse. Something had to crack. I chose Sarah as the pressure point. I sent her a DM from my real account. "We need to talk about Marcus." She read it immediately but didn't respond. I could see her typing, deleting, typing again. "Finally, I know who you are. He's been showing me your posts for weeks. The fake account, the comments, the trail mix. He wanted to see how far you'd go." The humiliation was so complete I couldn't breathe. Marcus had known. He'd been watching me watch him, letting me orchestrate my own downfall in real time. That was his revenge, not the blocking, not the silence, but the front row seat to my disintegration. I closed all my accounts that night, every single one. I took my laptop to the beach and threw it into the surf, a 1-200 exorcism that felt necessary and pathetic simultaneously. I sent Marcus one final email from my phone: "You win, I'm gone." He replied within minutes, the fastest he'd responded in months. This was never a game. That was the whole point. I lost my job the following week. Not because of the social media drama directly, but because I called in sick 4 days in a row and couldn't explain why without committing career suicide. My mother finally called, not to console, but to confirm. Marcus's mother told me everything. "You know, Allie, I always said you were too much like your father." My father, who'd left when I was 6 after similar accusations of being too much. The unexpected consequence wasn't the job or the mother. It was the silence. Suddenly, there were no notifications, no messages, no digital proof of my existence. I'd built my entire identity around being seen by Marcus, by my followers, by anyone who would look, and now I was invisible. I started leaving my house without my phone, just to prove I could exist without documenting it. Kat unblocked me after 2 months of radio silence. Her message was simple: "I'm only reaching out because I heard you started therapy." But Allie, you need to understand something. What you did wasn't just toxic, it was criminal. You stalked him. You harassed his new girlfriend. You used his brother. If you were a man, you'd be in jail. I read it 100 times, searching for the lie. There wasn't one. I'd weaponized my vulnerability until it became a threat. I'd turned heartbreak into a felony. At my lowest point, I showed my therapist the entire saga. Every screenshot, every fake account, every calculated move. She watched me explain how I'd needed to test Marcus's love, how I'd been protecting myself. When I finished, she leaned back and said, "What you were testing wasn't his loyalty, it was his tolerance for abuse." The word landed like a diagnosis. Abuse. I'd abused the man I loved, and then I'd abused the women who came after him, and I'd abused my friendships, and I'd abused the entire concept of love itself. All because I was too scared to say, "I think I'm losing you, and I'm terrified I'll deserve it." The current state of things is this: Marcus is engaged to Sarah. They announced it last week. She's wearing the ring he bought while I was testing him, the vintage setting Jenna had picked out. He proposed on the same trail where I'd suggested the trail mix, a detail so poetic it feels engineered for my personal torture. I still have dreams where I knock on his door and explain everything. I was scared. I was insecure. I was repeating patterns I'd watched my mother perform my entire childhood. In the dreams, he understands. He forgives. He chooses the version of me that existed before I became this. But that's not what happened. What happened is I created a situation where the only way to survive was to leave, and then I blamed him for walking away. So here I am, telling a stranger on the internet what I've paid $150 an hour to admit in therapy. Not because I want absolution. Not even because I think I've changed. I'm telling you because Marcus posted their engagement photo with a caption, "Grateful for someone who never needed proof to believe in us." The clarity of that statement, the way it reframes every choice I made as fundamentally unnecessary, feels like the final test I can't pass. He never needed me to be anything but honest. I failed that test by trying to create others. The real reason I'm confessing now is simpler. My mother called yesterday. She said, "Your father reached out. He heard about what happened with Marcus. He wants to talk to you about forgiveness." I hung up and laughed until I cried. Even now, the men in my life are coordinating their absences, building a network of people who leave and then want credit for considering a return. I'm not posting this for sympathy. I'm posting it because someone needs to say what we're not supposed to admit. Sometimes we destroy things because we're scared they'll end anyway. Sometimes we test people because we know we'll fail. And sometimes, the thirst trap isn't about wanting to be seen, it's about wanting to be caught. If you're reading this and thinking I'm the villain, you're right. If you're thinking I'm pathetic, you're also right. If you're wondering whether I've learned anything from this, the answer is yes, but not enough. I still catch myself performing for an audience that isn't there. I still have to stop my thumb from hovering over the post button when I'm lonely. Marcus didn't unfollow me because he was angry. He unfollowed me because I gave him no other way to protect himself. The calls he didn't answer weren't punishments. They were boundaries. And the ring he bought for me that now sits on Sarah's finger isn't a betrayal. It's a second chance he earned by walking away. So here's my final confession, the one that makes all the others look small. I still love him. Not in a healthy way, not in a way that matters. But when I close my eyes, I see him loading that dishwasher, humming the way he does, and I know I could have walked into that kitchen and wrapped my arms around him instead of picking a fight. I could have said, "I'm scared you're pulling away." I could have trusted him. I didn't. And that choice, that single, stupid, human choice, created every consequence that followed. The unfollow, the silence, the engagement that should have been mine. All of it traces back to a woman so desperate to be chosen that she engineered every possible reason not to be. If you're waiting for me to say I've moved on, I haven't. If you're waiting for redemption, this isn't that story. This is a story about a woman who broke something beautiful to see if it was strong enough to survive her, and then acted shocked when it wasn't. So tell me, am I the villain, or just someone who got so good at testing love that she forgot how to simply live in it?